Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back to the stream. I hope that your rest was amazing and outstanding and you're bursting full of energy today. We are a little bit earlier than normal today. Thanks for joining us. Your boy's traveling today and tomorrow, and so tomorrow's stream will also be early. We're targeting 12 noon Eastern time, early one, 9 a.m. Pacific Coast, as a matter of housekeeping. But the tubes are here, my friends. It's a beautiful Thursday. I hope your week is coming to a nice, easy close and you're accomplishing all the things you've set your mind to. We got business to attend to today. Quick preview on what's coming up, then we'll zoom in for further detail. But we got the blue states. They're out there begging. And yesterday, we read through the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals order that said, to the blue states, you don't get to demand that these probationary employees who were fired get shoved back into the executive branch, into the government. And they got fired again. And so now the blue states have come back out and they're saying, we have an emergency. We need a stay. So they're back up at the Fourth Circuit, and you can see they're very upset about this. Now, Trump has responded to this saying, what? Fourth Circuit? Don't undo any of this. You don't need a full hearing. Okay, you've already decided they're going to lose and their case needs to be afuera. So Trump has responded in opposition. We're still in the Fourth Circuit, battling with 19 blue states who are just crying from the rooftops, as you'd expect. We got some other situations here. We saw that there was another case out of the Fourth Circuit that they lost, and so we had another stay. And so the Fourth Circuit's coming out and putting a stop to a lot of this madness. So we'll come back on that one as well. We got clips here, lots of reactions, shocking numbers. Trump just wrapped up a cabinet meeting. We had some great clips on this one. A lot of these fired workers are being fired for good reason, and we'll hear from some of the cabinet on that coming up. We also had this one from Elon. He was in the room, and reaction on this inflation number, which looks like it's going down. So all good stuff there. Then we got to talk about this AP case, fake news AP, which can't figure out what the name of the Gulf of America is because they're so dense and thick in the brain. Well, they were thrown out of the Oval Office with good reason. And so they sued, and the judge came back and said that they have to go back into the Oval Office, which is interesting because I think anybody can sue now. Maybe we'll sue to get into the Oval Office. But the judge came back down, issued an order. We'll take a quick look at what the judge wrote in the order before we carry on and notice that Trump has appealed it. Okay, so this is his motion to stay that. The judge came out and said, you have to accept this reporter in the Oval Office. Obviously, that's ridiculous. And now they're appealing it up into the District of Columbia. It's about free speech, free press, free association, and all of those things from the fake news AP, which, as we mentioned, can't even figure out what the Gulf of America is called, which is pretty embarrassing for so-called journalists. So we'll come to that. We got reaction on this. We've got Tim Walz, who got obliterated last night. Veterans were screaming at him. A little bit of profanity there, but the profanity's allowed when it comes from veterans, okay? So we'll listen to it. We also had this wild clip. Gunther Eagleman clipped this one for us over on X. Good follow. He shared this one. This person shocked Bernie Sanders with their pronouns, and it's a wild scene. Even Anderson Cooper, the bigot over there at CNN, misgendered, mispronounced somebody. Oh, shocking. I know. He's probably going to have to pay penance for that. Then we'll turn our attention to this No Rogue Rulings Act because it just passed late last night in the House. Darrell Issa was the person who was driving this through. We're excited to see what that looks like. So we got the latest on that. We pulled up the actual congressional report, and look, it passed the House. So we can't wait for the Senate to screw it up. So it's going over there. No Rogue Judges Act. And so we'll read through the actual filing that was passed, go through that, see what's inside. And of course, hopefully we'll see if it passes in the Senate. Then we'll turn our attention to a nice exchange that happened today. Gosh, this was great. This one was Joe Kent. Remember him, this fellow right here, obliterated Mark Kelly, who apparently never looked into January 6th at all. Didn't know anything about confidential human sources or informants or anybody else, whatever you want to call them. Okay, they get very clever with their naming convention. Feds in the crowd, or Fed adjacent folks in the crowd, were there on January 6th. Mark Kelly, the space cadet, couldn't figure it out. So Joe Kent educated him. We also had 2 clips from Tulsi. She was in that cabinet meeting, and she's telling us 2 things. One, voting machine rigging, coming up on that one. And then another one saying, we're going to get some documents out. Okay, Rob? So just relax. Calm down, sir. All right. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. We want the documents. So she's explaining, we're digging them out. We're going to find them, and we'll get them over to you. So we'll keep our eye on that. And then RFK was out today. Gosh. And he tells us that they're going to figure out why we've got so much autism out there in America. And I've heard him speak and talk about this before, I think pinpointing the date back to like 1989, when something happened, whether it was Wi-Fi or additives or preservatives or whatever, something changed in the country, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. So we're looking forward to that. So a bunch of good stuff here today, my friends. Really glad that you're here and joining us. Once again, thanks for joining us early. Tomorrow, the stream will be earlier, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. on Pacific time. And we'll be happy to see you back here. Your boys traveling and being sociable and spending time with friends and family and the people that we love, which is important to do. So that's what we're doing. Going down, celebrating an 80th birthday today for a gentleman in my men's group. So happy birthday to him. And also a new baby in the house, a real one, that got delivered and has now returned home to my friends down in the valley. So that's why we're going down there. Thanks for joining up. And we'll see you, of course, tomorrow morning back here a bit early. All right. So now, without any further ado, we're going to keep the streams going. That's why we're here early. Tomorrow, the stream will be here. We'll just be a little bit different times. So thanks for that. Now, without any more housekeeping announcements, we've got business to attend to. And so let's get to it. We've got this one to start with. The blue states like Tish and Michigan and the rest of them are all crying foul. The Fourth Circuit, as we know, already came back down and issued a stay. They won in the lower courts, and the states got a judge to say, hire all of these fired probationary workers, lots of them, bring them back into the federal government. Well, the lower court said, bring them back, Trump, you're a dictator. And the Fourth Circuit came back down and said, no, are you guys crazy? States, you don't even have any standing. You can't sue on behalf of probationary workers who were fired. They can sue in a separate jurisdiction if they want to, but you can't sue on their behalf. So get out of here, Tish, put your shoes on and get out. So now the states are back at the Fourth Circuit. They're not letting up that easily. They're saying, this is an emergency. We need a stay. Because these fired probationary workers who were going to get fired again, remember, so they were rehired by judicial order. Trump fired them, rehired, refired again. Now the states are saying, no, rehire them again. Here's why. It's an emergency. We need a full rehearing en banc, which is the full Court of Appeals panel. It just came back. The original stay was just from the 3 judges. They say, and we're filing this right now. And this is appropriate because, among other reasons, say the blue states, this case concerns a matter of exceptional importance. Whether 20 federal agencies injured 19 blue states and D.C. through the sudden and unlawful mass layoff of thousands of federal probationary employees. Now, Trump is going to respond to this, so we'll read his response in a second. Whether agencies should be permitted to resume their unlawful conduct, we need a stay. They didn't give us advance notice and more. And so the states have standing, they say. The Fourth Circuit already said, no, you don't. And so we need the full court to review this. They say, Your Honor, at the Court of Appeals, if the status quo is not preserved through an immediate administrative stay, here's what's going to happen. And that's why these are so fun to read, because you're just like, oh, yes. This is going to happen. We know. We're ready for it. The agencies are going to terminate thousands of probationary employees once again. Yeah, I know. We're going to fire them again. You're fired again and again and again. While the court considers the petition, if you don't stay this, they're going to have to leave again. Allowing mass firings to go forward in this manner will cause chaos and injury to the states. And these are unrecoverable costs. They're going to be expenses, because the state is going to have a rapid response team. Do they have rapid response team for fired probationary employees? What? There's going to be a surge in unemployment claims if you fire them all, and that's going to require exhaustive investigations. So the states are going to have to investigate whether a federal bureaucrat was fired or something, and that's going to cause them harm. So you can't fire them because they're going to have to investigate whether you fired them appropriately or something. Disruption and damage to state programs that depend on federal workers. So like as we saw, one of their claims was, I think that one guy who had to go potty really bad on the hiking trail, he couldn't. He had to go poop in the woods. Financial harms from decreased tax revenue. Oh, that's amazing. And increased reliance on state social services programs. So if the feds fire these people, they can't collect taxes, state income taxes on it. Such a ridiculous argument. And they're going to rely on their state services for their citizens, and we're going to have to pay out for the people who pay state taxes. Now, the states accordingly seek a brief stay from the panel. While this is pending, we want to preserve the status quo because there's this whipsaw effect of differing court decisions that are happening all over the country, writing, stop this now. So Virginia Williamson sent that one in, and it was actually a short filing, but gosh, look at all these AGs here from all these blue states: Wisconsin, Rhode Island. We've got New York, Tish James here, and a bunch of them. All right, all signing off. Please stop this. Now, Trump responded. He said, come on, give me a break here. It's ridiculous. They said back, all right, this is the government's motion, and we oppose this, telling us, all right, listen. All right, look, Court of Appeals, full panel. On April 9th, a motions panel of this court entered a considered order. They did their due diligence on this, granting the government's motion for a stay. We asked for a stay so that we could fire these people. And remember, the government is going to suffer harm if they have to rehire these people, that when it proves or turns out that they were correct in the firing, they're not going to get that money back that they paid these probationary fired workers. Trump says the panel should now decline the state's unusual request to stay its own order, right? The Court of Appeals just came out and stayed it. So you want a stay of the stay, is what you're saying, huh? And thereby re-enjoin the government pending disposition of this forthcoming petition rehearing en banc. Saying the Court of Appeals already determined. You guys said this yesterday. Having reviewed the record, the court said, you guys, the district court's opinion and the party's briefing that the stay factors favor us, favor Trump. Now the states are coming back trying to reverse that. Now the motions panel emphasized that the government is likely to succeed in showing the district court lacked jurisdiction over the plaintiff's claims because the states have no standing. And the government is unlikely to recover the funds dispersed to these reinstated employees. Like if you have to hire them and pay them, then we win on appeal. We're not going to go back and get their money because they're going to spend it on their seed oils. Now, the states offer no response to these holdings and instead simply repeat their contention, which the panel has already rejected. We just read their motion. It was really bad, actually. I'm surprised at how short it was. We just read it, right? It says 8 pages here. It was like 2 pages. Really, yeah, like 2 pages. That was their filing. That was their request. Honestly, it's pathetic. All right, so they sent that in. Hey, we can't even believe it. They already rejected this. The termination of probationary employees would cause various harms to state revenues and tax bases, but there's nothing beyond that. The states identify no reason why the full panel, not just the 3 who made the initial decision, would reach a different conclusion later down the line. Now, nor do the states, the 19 blue states plus DC, nor do their cursory arguments establish that an en banc review is even likely. This court does not typically grant en banc review of a motions panel decision just in general, and although the states insist, they say, this is a matter of exceptional importance, like babies, they don't identify any legal argument for why the motions panel decision is incorrect at all. The mere fact that this case is important to Tish, to both the states and the federal government, you should pay attention, was pounding the table, cannot be a reason why the considered decision on the motions panel, you guys just decided this, should not be able to promptly take effect. Like you're going to emasculate your own decision, but particularly in light of the panel's conclusion that the injunction inflicts irreparable harm on the government because we're not getting that money back. Now, the motions panel decision from this Court of Appeals is consistent also with a recent Supreme Court decision that also did something very similar in the Northern District of California, Judge William Alsup, that we talked about here, where he was also trying to do the same thing. And SCOTUS said, nope, can't really do that. You don't have that power, which had required the reinstatement of also fired probationary employees. Now, in granting that, the Supreme Court came out and said the government had established irreparable harm. If you force us to hire these people, it's going to cost us a lot of time and a lot of money, and it's not your power to do that. The Supreme Court also said, to obtain a stay pending the filing and the disposition of a petition of a writ, an applicant must show a likelihood of irreparable harm. And so, for the foregoing reasons, the court should also deny that request for a stay. Okay, so this is the blue states. They're up there. I mean, they want these people back in there. They're begging the Court of Appeals to reverse themselves. That's how bad they want it. Now, we'll see what the Court of Appeals does, the full panel. I think that their claim has been properly eliminated by SCOTUS on the California case, and so they're grasping and desperate. But the Fourth Circuit also came back down and issued another order in this case, and you may remember this case. This is the Linda McMahon Secretary of Education case, and once again, the American Association for Colleges and the National Center for Teacher Residencies and the Maryland Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, all these like fake teacher organizations, whatever they are, sued. And they said, you can't cut the Department of Education, remember? And what happened? Well, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals also came down and said the stay is granted. Sorry. We grant Trump's motion to stay the lower level preliminary injunction. So another victory, right? We're starting to tally these up. So a couple good ones out of the Fourth Circuit. That one's fresh out of the oven today. And these lower level district court judges are getting reversed. They're getting stayed. So as this process continues, so too will the winning. And so good developments there. Now, why are these cuts happening? Okay, the states will continue to screech and cry about all the damages that are being done to them. But our friend Gunther Eagleman was clipping hard today watching the cabinet meeting, and we appreciate him snagging this moment for us, where he was explaining how the Department of Labor that is helping to make these decisions to fire people who are not useful, this is what they have found. This is from Trump's cabinet meeting today.
Then accountability matters. That's what we're recognizing. With our partners at the Department of Labor for Government Efficiency, just a few weeks ago, we realized there's about $4.4 billion in COVID funds that were not used, that the state coffers were just holding on to.
Of course.
Out of that, we've returned $1.4 billion back to the state treasury, so essentially to the American people, and we'll go back and claw the rest of those billions of dollars back. And on the heels of that, late last night, we're understanding unemployment insurance fraud. That trust needs to be whole for the American people. When we need it for who deserves it. That's not what we're seeing. And the numbers that we saw last night, again, exposed by our partners at DOJ, at the Department of Labor. Since 2020, over $400 million of payments have gone out already. And when you hear these numbers, apparently in the United States, we have over almost 25,000 people who are over 115 years old who are collecting $59 million that we have sent out to people. Talk about fraudulent behavior. Mr. President, 28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old have collected fraudulent payments at the tune of $254 million has gone out.
Rich babies.
And lastly, 10,000 people who have not been born yet, 15 years into the future,
wow.
$69 million, and they haven't even been born yet. In one case, they will be born 129 years from now. The United States government sent them $41,000, and they're not born yet. So, under the Department of Labor, those are the things that we're uncovering. I couldn't be more honored to tell the American people that we're bringing back their dollars and we're saving them and returning them to the United States Treasury. Also, jobs numbers. Last Friday, 228,000 new jobs were reported. That is good for the American people. That is my primary job, is to grow that workforce under your leadership. So we've kicked off the America at Work tour, and we'll be visiting all 50 states, and I'll be working with my colleagues here to do just that. So thank you, Mr. President. We're going to grow this economy. We're going to keep our focus on the American worker.
So you're finding tremendous fraud, though. Those numbers are really bad when you...
Yeah, really bad numbers. And we're glad that they're starting to expose them. Now, the Democratic Party and the blue states and their AGs are all very excited about keeping that waste, fraud, and abuse in our government because it was going to them. That's why they want it. But we don't want it going anywhere. It should be eliminated. One man who's helping to make that happen, Elon Musk.
To your fantastic leadership, this amazing cabinet, and the very talented Doge team, I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is just absurd, like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet. I mean, I think anyone can appreciate whether, I mean, come on, that's just crazy. You know, some of these things, people ask me like, well, how are you going to find waste and fraud in the government? I'm like, well, actually just go in any direction. That's how you find it. It's very common. it's, as the military would say, target-rich environment.
Open any file anywhere.
So I think we're doing a lot of good in excellent collaboration with the cabinet to achieve these savings. And it will actually result in better services for the American people, and that we're going to be spending their tax dollars in a way that is sensible and fair and good.
And your people are fantastic. In fact, hopefully they'll stay around for the long haul. We'd like to keep as many as we can. They're great, smart, sharp, right? Finding things that nobody would have thought of. Very computer savvy.
Yes.
And we want them to root out all of the fraud, and there is a lot of it. You could open up any spreadsheet, go to any agency, and just say, we'd like to look at your accounting records. Yeah! For what? We want to know how many birthday parties you had there. How many birthdays did you have every single week? It's probably a lot. And part of the reason is because we want more efficiency out of our government. If we're not spending all of our taxpayer dollars on Democrat trans parties in the sub-Sahara, well, maybe we'll have more goods and services that are useful for Americans who actually need it back home. And one of those things that we're sick of is inflation, because it's theft of our entire livelihoods out from under our noses. Fortunately, Trump is bringing those numbers down too.
Consumer prices month over month. So this was actually a drop of 0.1%, negative 0.1%. That's the first time we've seen that since COVID. Year over year, the annual inflation rate was at 2.4%. This was also better than expected and a 6-month low, moving in the right direction. As far as why this happened, there's a few drivers. One thing that really played a role here, as you can see the trend here, the inflation rate dipping a little bit. One of the drivers was energy. The fact that gasoline prices did not move up like they usually do in the month of March, that really helped the inflation.
It does look like it is improving, and we're just beginning. So we're going to continue to see these numbers go down as we reclaim the American economy. All right, now let's turn our attention to fake news AP and see what's happening here in D.C. President Trump appealing the fake news AP. The Associated Press got a victory at a lower level District of Columbia decision. We'll read through it, but here is Trump's notice of appeal, and we also have Trump's memorandum of appeal, because this involves Taylor Budowich, which is the person who's being sued by the AP, and Budowich is the deputy chief of staff who said the AP had to be kicked out of the Oval Office and other events because they're not even real journalists. They don't report things that are factually true, like that the Gulf of America is called the Gulf of America. For some reason, they're still stuck in 2024. They can't figure it out. The name of the body of water has changed. It is only known as the Gulf of America. And until they understand that, then they're just dumb reporters and dumb journalists who shouldn't have access to the Oval Office at all, because who knows what the rest of the reporting looks like. So they sued Trump, and a judge came back down and granted them their request. And the judge wrote a big, long rant about it, said, about 2 months ago, Trump appealed this, so we'll read his response in a second. But he said, 2 months ago, this is the judge, Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, because that's what it's called. It's our body of water. It's been ours from the beginning. We hug it from shore to shore, from Florida to Texas. One big happy family wrapped in our arms. It's our water. So it's called the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, because they're dumb, didn't follow suit. Now, for that editorial choice, which was more like I would say a partisan whininess and spiteful decision, not an editorial choice, it's because they're mad they lost. The White House sharply curtailed the AP's access to coveted, tightly controlled media events with the president because they're idiots. The AP now sues the White House chief of staff, her deputy director, and this is Taylor, a female, her communications deputy, and the press secretary collectively called the government, saying, you can't exclude us because of our viewpoint. We can call it whatever we want. And they do that, by the way. They call things all sorts of things that are not. They call men women, and they like love it, indulge in that. It's wild. Even when everybody can see, that's a dude. They say the same thing about temporary restraining orders. They say that's a TRO. We say, are you kidding? That's an injunction. Everybody can see it dangling right there. So they do the same thing. No, it's the Gulf of Mexico. Okay. You people are just weird. So if you're going to be like 0 for 3 on this stuff, if you're going to scream January 6th is an insurrection and all these nuts, you just get out. You don't belong in the room. Get out. Today, the court grants the relief, shoving the AP back in there. Says, but this injunction does not limit the various permissible reasons the government may have for excluding journalists. It does not mandate that all eligible journalists, or indeed any journalist at all, be given access to the president, but kind of does. And it does not prohibit government officials from choosing which journalists to sit down with at all. And it certainly does not prevent senior officials from expressing their own views, but you do have to shove this person back in. No, the court simply holds that under the First Amendment, if the government opens the door to some journalists, if it's the Oval Office, the East Room, or elsewhere, it cannot then shut the doors to other journalists because of their viewpoints. Got to shove them back in. The Constitution requires no less, says this judge. Trump's going to appeal it, obviously. Now, the White House, writes the judge, has been abuzz with journalists for 150 years. And today, there's about 1,355 reporters who have access to the White House in some capacity. Not all journalists enjoy the same level of access, though. And they're split into two groups. The first is called the press pool, says the judge. 1 or 2% of credentialed White House journalists are there. The press pool attends limited space events in the Oval Office, the Cabinet Room, and elsewhere, travels with the president domestically and on Air Force One, attends any other events with limited access, including at his home in Mar-a-Lago, Inner Circle. Now, the press pool acts as the eyes and ears of the full press corps of news outlets outside D.C., and traditionally, the pool has had a set number of spots distributed between different, well-established outlets, so-called. And the AP had 2 permanent spots, 1 print reporter and 1 photographer for over a century. Not anymore. And they say the second group of journalists is the larger press corps, currently over 1,000 members. Now, they undergo a rigorous application to earn a hard pass, a credentialing, allowing general access to all White House press facilities between 5:30 and 10:30. The D.C. Circuit has imbued these hard passes with significant due process protections. Like once you get a pass, it's yours, and they can't take it away for you. It's like a right. Press pool members also belong to this larger second group, and journalists without hard passes can still attend events, but they got to get a day pass from Secret Service. Now, the White House has long voluntarily opened spaces for hard pass holders to report on the news, including in the Brady briefing room, 49 seats that 65 media outlets occupy or share. The AP has the front row, center seat in that room. Now, then there is the East Room, which can accommodate up to 180 people, foreign leaders, and more. Journalists may RSVP for the East Room and similar spaces online. Other areas have got nicknames like Pebble Beach, North Lawn, Marine One, other things. Now, there are several iterations of the press pool sizes. Some people attend, some other here. There's 13 journalists over here. Newswire services like the AP, which is largely fake news and probably mostly CIA, are syndicated outlets that distribute their text reporting by wire to subscribers across the globe. So wire services generally have the broadest reach. So the AP is super important. So getting a spot in any version has always been difficult. Now, at minimum, they needed to be hard pass holders, but that was not enough. Also, the White House Correspondents Association, a private entity that's not the government at all, controlled the pool's composition. The AP says the correspondents had always prioritized wire services because they had the broadest reach. Yeah. Now, seniority also offered privileges. The AP was guaranteed, right? Guaranteed. It's like the good old boys club, right? Not anymore. 13 core spots in the pool, 2 of them. The photographer was always the line leader and the first person through the door, like he's, a Marine. Okay. The remaining pool seats typically rotated among the largest and most well-established media companies. Generally, a member of the White House comms office joined the president. They maintained editorial control of its own team. But during this litigation, something changed. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced on February 25th that the government, not the White House Correspondents Association, the government, would now choose the hard pass holders who gained access to the press pool. Yeah, why should it go to them? Some liberal private group? She said the government wanted to promote new media that historically have been denied privilege. Now, according to the AP, the practical result has been that the newly arranged press pool trades out 1 wire service seat and 1 photography seat for 2 new media seats. And the White House has permitted a second wire service reporter at some pool events, but just not the AP. In fact, during the pendency of this litigation, 1 or both of the other 2 wire services have always obtained a press pool spot. The White House Correspondents continues to assign, at the White House's discretion, the Brady Room. In short, new media has benefited, but little else has changed. Now, the government maintains, Trump, that under these new procedures, there's no categorical ban on people that refuse to use Gulf of America. But it has continued to admit outlets like the New York Times that have been critical. The New York Times uses the former name. In fact, all members of the original press pool have continued to use the Gulf of Mexico while noting Trump's order. So he's saying, so they're just picking on the AP. So why has the AP alone been penalized here, says this judge? Well, the AP claims, and the court now finds, that the government has singled out AP because it won't update its name in the style book, which is what everybody refers to name things. On February 11th, shortly after the AP refused to rename the Gulf, Leavitt summoned the White House correspondent, Zeke Miller, AP chief, over there. She told Miller that at Trump's direction, said, look, the AP is not going to be permitted in the Oval Office as part of the press pool until you revise your style book. Later that day, AP journalist, so-called, was barred from an executive order signing and a press conference. Like, nope, you're outside, get out. What? That night, an AP reporter again was excluded. We remember, we were laughing our butts off. The AP photographer still could attend the event. Like, well, we do want photos, so you can come. But for the AP's text reporting, journalists had to wait for the video feed, and that caused delays. Oh, they had to wait for the video. Oh, it's so hard. 2 days later, the government barred the AP altogether from attending 3 other Oval Office events. The AP protested. Then, the Deputy Chief of Staff, Taylor, she said, the Associated Press continues to ignore the lawful geographic name change of Gulf of America. I guess it is a him. Then their right to irresponsible and dishonest reporting is protected by the First Amendment, but stressed it does not give them access to the Oval Office or Air Force One. Then on February 18th, Susie Wiles, shout out, responded to the AP's complaints. She said, no, the AP style book has misused and at times weaponized its influence to push a divisive and partisan agenda, said Susie. And they're denying the authority of a duly elected president. We remain hopeful that the name of the body of water in question will be appropriately reflected in the style books where Americans refer. Now, later that day, the president publicly stated that the AP had been very, very wrong on the election and how they treated Trump. Said they didn't do us any favors. I'm not doing them any favors. And the AP had then been barred from Mar-a-Lago too. 4 days later, the AP and a text journalist were barred from the Republican Governors Association. And since then, their hard pass holders have not been admitted to different meetings. Like they didn't get into the Zelensky meeting. They didn't get into Polish Duda's meeting. The White House photographer called Evan Vucci from the AP testified that Ukraine video photographer managed to get into Zelensky, But even so, the reporting suffered. We couldn't transmit photos or text updates, so the AP had to wait, and they were 40 minutes behind their competitors. Oh, wow, and that sucks for them. But we don't care. Maybe they should be honest and just change the names. More because foreign correspondents specialize in video rather than photography, the images were under standards. Well, someone else can eat, okay? Someone else can come in and have a bite of the meal. In sum, the judge writes, AP hard pass holders have not been admitted in any form or fashion to the press pool since February 14th, Valentine's Day, when they got their hearts broken. And although the government claims the AP is still eligible for these, they just keep changing their terminology. They offer no reason besides the Gulf issue for banning them. And they couldn't communicate that during the hearing either. They think that they're refusing to adhere to what the president says the law is, and that's it. Now, the judge says, I want to consider this. The AP says it has been systematically excluded from all these events. The government says no. They have the same general access that other media people do. But the court finds, yeah, they have been excluded from large events more often than their peers. So something changed. They said, well, we used to go to these events all the time. At a hearing, the AP witnesses made clear that its reporters have been systematically and almost completely excluded from events at the White House. The government declined to offer witnesses in rebuttal. The court credits the detailed timeline that they built through testimony and evidence, right? So the AP came in, laid out this sob story, and the judge is buying it. On February 13th, 2 days after Caroline Leavitt's first indication of government displeasure, photographer was allowed, but others were not. Then in Palm Beach, another one. And this was Black History Month. Oh, sometimes even foreign AP's correspondents get in. They came in when Macron came over, but the AP's hard pass holders were not allowed to attend. Now, the judge says, well, these were pretty limited, so not a lot of people got in. But they've been excluded even beyond the White House. Here was one at Air Force One. They were on the tarmac, and the AP couldn't come out there. They were also excluded from the DOJ speech and the sizable Great Hall. Judge says, well, they could have fit in there. And then as winter turned to spring, the AP's freeze out has thawed slightly. Fun, nice words there, Judge. In March, the government began allowing AP photographers into the East Room, some of it on St. Patrick's Day and more. And so the government is not showing that they're giving access. And so in some, the court says that they have been systematically banned and they need access. Talking about a preliminary injunction and the First Amendment, telling us like lots of free speech stuff. Okay, so the judge is going to tell us on one end of the political spectrum, let's just see what he says. So we'll see what his order is. So he's going to give us a lot of stuff. Trump is appealing this, obviously, saying it's our building. We don't have to give him access. So here's what the judge writes in conclusion. He's balancing the equities, and then he's going to give us his conclusion. All right. Saying Trump shall immediately rescind the denial of the AP's access to the Oval Office and Air Force One and other limited spaces when they're open to other members of the press. So AP gets shoved back in. Trump is appealing this. Now, defendants, Trump, shall immediately rescind their viewpoint-based denial of AP access and give them access to everything. This preliminary injunction is in effect, and it's issued without the requirement of any security bond, because why not? Trevor McFadden, who I think was a Trump appointee, issuing a demand that Trump grant access to the AP. Now, he put a footnote here. The court notes the president is not a party to this case, and the defense has not argued that an injunction would affect his constitutional authority in any way. Well, you just ordered that he allow this dude into his office, into his home, into his White House. He doesn't want him there. You mandated that the AP can go into his private space when it's open to the public, but now Trump has to let him in. Pretty shocking stuff. So Trump, of course, has appealed this, and here is what has hit. They say, all right, this is a motion to stay your decision, Judge, pending appeal. They say, Judge McFadden, your injunction constitutes an unprecedented intrusion into executive authority. For the first time in history, and inconsistent with circuit court precedent from the Court of Appeals, a court issued an order to control access to the president's most intimate spaces: his personal workspace, the Oval Office; his means of transportation, Air Force One, like his car; his personal home, like Mar-a-Lago. Now, it did so largely by conducting a forum analysis, which is used by courts to evaluate restrictions on speech, and by equating spaces for large press gatherings with more limited personal spaces, like the Oval Office. The DOJ is not the Oval Office. But there are no allegations that Trump have restricted AP's speech at all. They're free to speak about whatever they want. You said that this is some sort of a content-based restriction on what must be uttered in the Oval Office, but that's not what's happening. They're not controlling any reporter's ability to send text messages or to send photos where they're admitted. There's no prior restraint on the AP's publications. No one's controlling their speech. They're allowed to say whatever they want. Instead, this case is about special access to the president's personal and private spaces, which the D.C. Circuit has refused to consider the Court of Appeals under a forum analysis. So, do you have a forum to speak and participate? A filmmaker doesn't have access or demand to access certain things. It would be unreasonable to suggest because the president allows interviews with some that he must give it to all, right? The president has the choice. Because he talks to some people doesn't mean he has to talk to everybody. It doesn't give them a right. Now, additionally, Judge McFadden, now that you know about that case that you forgot about, the court should exercise caution and at least stay its ruling regarding the AP and their access to the Oval Office, Air Force One, and Mar-a-Lago. Maybe the other places, but those are private. Underlying the court's ruling are profound separation of powers issues. The executive maintains the president has the right to dictate who is permitted in his personal spaces for any reason, no less than any American has the right to dictate who enters their personal office space, vehicle, or home. It would be unreasonable for the president to lose the right to control who is in his private spaces, including his private home at Mar-a-Lago, simply because he becomes the president. And moreover, until the questions presented in this case are resolved on appeal, the court risks unending litigation every time a reporter from the AP is rejected from entry anywhere. Into the press pool, Mar-a-Lago, Air Force One, Oval Office, and all of these other things. Anytime they could sue, having nothing to do with the contents of their speech at all. It's about access. We're not limiting what they can say. They can call it Gulf of Mexico all they want. But we don't have to let them into my house. The court should permit appellate review of this issue before you mandate they get access. Now, ultimately, because the court, you, judge, made a mistake in issuing this injunction, and to ensure compliance with the rules, you should grant us a stay. Here's why. We're going to win. Now, as discussed in the government's prior briefing, this is not about speech at all or restrictions on speech at all. This case is about access to space, and it's the president's intimate space. Now, in its opinion, the court hinged its ultimate conclusion about press pool access in distinguishing another case on the notion that the press pool access is not about speech at all, but it's about access to observe. Now, although the court recognized this case is about constraints on access here, not restrictions on speech, so this is an access case. It's not a speech case. If it's an access case, you use this analysis. If it's a speech case, you use this analysis. But the court did speech analysis on an access case. Says the court adopted a forum analysis to review. But the D.C. Circuit has disavowed this. You can't do that. You can't use a forum analysis to determine constraints about access. Indeed, it's well established. There is no First Amendment right for press to access any location that is not generally open to the public. Supreme Court decided that in 1965. They said the prohibition, right? Somebody sues, the White House is the people's house. I want access to it. They say the prohibition of unauthorized entry into the White House diminishes the citizen's opportunity to gather information he might find relevant. That's true. Like, yeah, If we got to go in there and poke around Nancy Pelosi's office, because it's the people's house, okay, we can find a bunch of stuff in there. It would be relevant to how the country's being run and more. But that doesn't make entry into the White House a First Amendment right. The right to speak and publish doesn't carry with it the unrestrained right to gather information. U.S. Supreme Court in 1968. Otherwise, everyone's going to sue for that stuff. There is no constitutional right to have access to particular government information or to require openness from the bureaucracy. Maybe there should be. Now, the press is free to do battle against secrecy and deception in the government, and we do, but the press cannot expect from the Constitution any guarantee that it will succeed. Now, nonetheless, the court adopted a speech analysis here and said it violated the First Amendment right. But that is clearly inapplicable to the president's personal spaces. Okay, in another case called Cheryl, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals also said that simply because the president opens his private space to, quote, selected journalists for an interview or briefing does not mean he surrenders the discretion to determine who has access to him in those settings. Oh, you let Sean Hannity come into the Lincoln bedroom. Guess what? Now Rachel Maddow has access too. Only fair. Further, never in history has a court ruled that the president cannot take a person's viewpoint into consideration when determining who has access to him in private spaces. What kind of an idiotic decision is this, Trevor? To the contrary, the D.C. Circuit has observed that presidents are permitted to take reporters' viewpoints into consideration in selecting journalists for private interviews and briefings. Trump can decide, I'll talk to Sean, I'm not going to talk to Rachel. Respectfully, Judge, the court's use of forum analysis and other legal considerations of the court's opinion were in error. Oh, dang, son. Respectfully, Judge, your whole opinion is wrong. Oh, man, that's great. Your whole opinion is wrong. Like all of your analysis. I'm glad we fast forwarded through it. Second, the parties' competing harms and balance of equities and public interest overwhelmingly favor a stay. And like saying, Judge, you missed whole avenues of case law. Like you built the house over here. You're on the wrong lot, dude. You delivered the pizza to the wrong house. What are you doing? Second, they say public equities favor a victory here. As explained, Judge Trevor, the preliminary injunction, which requires the president to admit the AP to his personal space and other limited areas, is unprecedented. Never has a court directed the executive to provide access to a president's intimate presidential spaces. All disputes before now concerned general press access to the press facilities, which the AP unquestionably continues to enjoy. They get that. Now you're shoving him into basically his bedroom. Now requiring, maybe he should. Should they get access to his bedroom too? And maybe Melania's underwear again, like the FBI got when they raided Mar-a-Lago, Judge? Requiring such access with regard and without a regard to a journalist's viewpoint intrudes on the executive prerogative. And who should be in the presence of the president? Like you get to decide where you spend your time until Trevor said otherwise. Now that sort of harm to the executive branch is a violation of the separation of powers, and it is irreparable. Now conversely, Judge Trevor, the AP has not established that it will suffer irreparable harm if the order is stayed. Now, although the court concluded the AP did establish sufficient harm, the AP continues to cover the White House all the time. They're there right now. It also has enjoyed access in one form or another to every single East Room and limited access press credentialed event since February 2025, except one. There was one they didn't come to. Did you come to this one on February 28th? In one way, shape, or form, they said yes. So maybe not all the journalists that they want, but we had somebody there. They still argue over that one. You were there at every one and you're suing? Babies. The AP financial harms are also no greater than any other media group that lacks a presence in the press pool. You guys have to have direct access. Not all media groups can physically be a part of the pool, and the harms suffered by non-pool members are merely the cost of doing business. This is a competitive journalistic environment that often turns on being provided access to newsmakers, including based on the content of their coverage. Let some other people have a bite. Have them come out and have a meal at the table. We'd all like to have a taste. But The AP's been in charge for virtually ever. Now, in light of this concession, writes Trump, from the AP's White House correspondent, the court's factual conclusion is contrary to the contrary is plainly in error. The judge saying, you kept them out. It's not true at all. Even the AP's White House person says, no, we had basically access to everything except maybe that one, but we did have somebody there. Indeed, not only did the AP concede that it has been present in some form at every East Room and other pre-event, except maybe the February 28th tarmac landing, maybe that one, but the AP knows of no other non-pool media group that has received as much access as them. Yeah, so who's getting more access than the AP? Can you tell us? How are you being so victimized? Trump says, for the reasons described above, this court should grant a stay of its preliminary injunction while we continue to appeal this and stop your order that says we have to give the AP access to Trump's most intimate and private spaces, Oval Office, Air Force One, Mar-a-Lago. And if you're not going to grant a stay, give us another type of stay because we're going to continue to fight this. Signed coming out of Ed Martin's D.C. office, signed by Brian Hudak of the Civil Division. So Trump appeals this, and that is looking good. I think that judge may have goofed bigly trying to reinvent this case as a free speech case when it isn't. It's an access case. And we're looking forward to seeing what he does, if he grants the stay, or what the Court of Appeals does when we land there, because that is coming up next. Now, while we're on this, I wanted to show you this docket. This is very similar. So the AP is suing for access. Perkins Coie, one of those fired law firms who got their relationship with the feds canceled, is also going wild. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this other than to show you the docket. And this is crazy. So this is Mark Elias's former law firm. We covered Michael Sussman. These were the election riggers who were suing all over the place, trying to create the Russian collusion hoax back during 2016, where they were working with Hillary Clinton and Fusion GPS and all the things. Awful entity, in my opinion. Now, their contract got afuera right out of here. Judge Beryl Howell has been giving them a pretty hard time, and she's a horrible judge in D.C. But Perkins is going wild. So look at this docket, okay? So let's go back. Look at all these filings in just a couple of days. So I'm still going. So Judge Beryl Howell came back down and said, file some more stuff. And look at all of these filings from all of their friends. Like, this is the deep state, rising out and showing you in filings who they are. So all of these were amicus briefs. So here, just a snippet of some of these. The International Academy of Trial Lawyers. Okay, so they submit an amicus brief. It's like friends of the court. You get in trouble. They're like, go out and get a bunch of character letters. Get a bunch of references. You need a new job. Get a bunch of references about how awesome you are and how dangerous this is and how dooming this will be for America. So they've done it. They went out. They got the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. They asked for permission. Then you've got this one, amicus. NAACP, Legal Defense Fund. They're coming in. Then you've got more from them. Then the bar associations, okay, from all over the country coming in. They want to file. Then we've got general counsel coming in as amici, general counsel amici, who are friends of them. Here's former senior government officials also coming in. Then we've got former senior, let's see who these people are. Who are these people? Former senior government officials. 9 pages. We are public officials. Trump is bad. Deputy Attorney General Gregory Craig and a bunch of ambassadors. Chuck Hagel, remember him? All these people. Michael Hayden. Judge Luttig. Oh, one of the dumbest judges in American history. Judge Michael Luttig, who said that Trump was going to get thrown off the ballots. One of the dumbest morons ever is filing this. Like legitimately dumb. That guy is stupid. And it's wild to say that. He was like a judge. I mean, just brain dead. Shocking. So that continues. Then you've got more general counsel, more bar associations. William Zaff is a notice of appearance. Then media organizations come filing in. So this was yesterday. Then NGOs. So you got media organizations, press freedom advocates, then NGOs are filing. So there's a whole list of NGOs that are filing. Then we get the Korematsu Center for Law and Equality. Then we get solo and small law firm lawyers all coming in. America's Future coming in. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. NGOs now have theirs submitted. And here's another notice of appearance, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. So my point in sharing this with you is we're over the mark. Okay, when you see that happen, when you see, oh my gosh, all these people coming out, they're like Perkins Coie. It's like the Death Star is about to be taken out. So all of these people are coming out to support him. They are shook. They are shook. And I couldn't be happier. Now, part of the reason why they're having such a tough time is because they don't know how to label things, right? The AP is suing because they can't label the Gulf of America properly. They call it the Gulf of Mexico because they're idiots and they can't understand how it works. Perkins Coie, they mislabeled things. They mislabeled Trump as a Russia colluder when it turns out Michael Sussman was really the one colluding against Trump. And it's very confusing for them to keep track of all these labels. And so CNN's most recent bigot and transphobe called Anderson Cooper got into it with another person with difficult labels.
Paul, we're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
They, them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Good evening, Senator Sanders. Polling and turnout data indicate that men of all racial demographics are turning away from the Democratic Party. But of course...
There's so many layers to this. Okay, so Coop says she's a Democrat and she's a civil rights lawyer. Uses the wrong pronouns. That's illegal. Now it's the death penalty for Anderson Cooper for not honoring this person's they, them pronouns. Then after that happens, Bernie Sanders zooms in so he can get a closer look at this creature. Because as you can see, there's the zoom in. He goes, what? They, them? The hell is that? So Bernie's coming in for a closer look. He's like, what's a they, them? I've never seen one of these before. Oh. And then he's just dumbfounded. He goes, looks like a woman to me. The hell is going on? And then the mouth drops open. He goes, huh? What the hell is that thing? Then he catches himself. Then he closes the mouth. Then the tongue comes out. He's like, okay, what the hell kind of answer am I supposed to give here? So Bernie's having a rough day. He has no idea what the hell a they, them is. What the hell's going on over there? So then what's even funnier about this is her question. Okay, she just answered the question for herself. The question was, why are men leaving the Democratic Party? It's like, well, you're a pretty damn good explanation of the reason why. Right there. Because anytime you have to talk to somebody with they, them pronouns, they shove it in your face like they, them pronouns. You go, what is it? It's not even worth talking to it. Just not even worth it. Oh. Well, that's the end of this conversation then. Nice seeing you. Have a nice life. Go they, them all over the mountaintops, all over the hillside. No one cares. Have a nice life. So Bernie Sanders is sharing the face that we all feel. I can relate to Bernie, or right here. I have the same expression. Now, Anderson Cooper also is experiencing the same thing. And he just got told. Anderson Cooper just got, I don't know, Anderson Cooper might come out next time with a MAGA hat on after this little exchange. All right, let's watch it one more time now that we know what's happening. And listen to her question. She says, men are leaving the Democratic Party. Obviously, because your party's filled with lunatics.
Paul, we're back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
They, them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Good evening, Senator Sanders. Polling and turnout data indicate that men of all racial demographics are turning away from the Democratic Party. But of course...
Paul, we're back with Senator...
Okay. So good luck to the Democrats. Hopefully they get more they, thems out there. And Bernie Sanders can continue the facade like he knows what's happening. Now, the Democrats also have a mislabeling problem. Remember, they spent a lot of time mislabeling Tim Walz as a war hero. He's not. he didn't carry weapons of war anywhere, as far as we know. He said he did, but he didn't. Now, there might be some profanity in here, so here's just a quick reminder on this. There might be some veterans who are screaming profanities at Tim Walz here. Might be a couple. They're quiet and muted, but if there is a concern about that, now's a good time to hit the mute button. But this is Tim Walz, who is giving a speech, and the room is filled with veterans. And we normally avoid all profanity, but when veterans are screaming at Tim Walz for stealing their valor, it's worth it.
Welcome to the Capitol. It's great that you're Sir, you're welcome to come. Let me finish. Let me finish. Oh, hey, there's some passion in the meal.
Whoa! Even Tim Walz got caught off by that. Whoa! Whoa! There's some passion in this room. Someone says, shut your effing mouth. You didn't do anything, Tim. You sympathize with the Chinese. Even Tim, whoa! That dude's pissed. Yeah, don't lie to America. Now, here is another person who is a Democrat who was on with Fox News today and said, my party's in big trouble, telling this to Harris Faulkner.
You know, Doug, you and I have been talking over a number of years. You saw the party going left with Hillary Clinton when she lost. Is it still doing that, and who's winning?
Well, it is still going left. I'd argue hard left. Bernie Sanders, AOC are indeed the leaders of the party. All we heard from them, and you saw it on the screen and you said it, Harris, is anti-Trump. No positive programs, certainly no centrist programs. And I would argue that my party is out of touch with the mainstream, with the ideas that elected Donald Trump. He is moving very quickly and very aggressively, sometimes a little further than perhaps the electorate would want. But my party just bashes and trashes. And with AOC and Bernie Sanders at the helm, I think we are only running on opposition to the Republicans. No ideas, no plans.
Yeah, that's true. They don't have any ideas or plans. They never did. That's the little secret. Okay, they never, even in 2020 with Biden or 16 with Hillary, what ideas did they have? It's just all class warfare and racism and bigotry. That's all it is. There's no actually building of anything in America. So it's nice that he's recognizing that. But we have come down firmly on this one. We support Jasmine Crockett for the Democratic nominee. Okay, AOC, she's fine. Bernie's fine. But Jasmine really has what it takes. So we're going to be supporting her for the Democratic nominee for president in 2028. We think she has what it takes. All right, now, let's carry on because we had another big victory today. Looking good. No Rogue Judges Act. It passes. Thank you to Representative Darrell Issa. Coming out of the House of Representatives, this puppy now making its way over to the Senate. And we'll see what happens there. We remember this H.R. 1526, NORA of 2025, came out from Representative Darrell Issa, Republican California, was in the House Judiciary Committee, and it is now come out of committee, and it's passed the full House of Representatives. You can see here in this little tracker here, pass the House. Next, we go to pass the Senate, and then, hopefully, it ends up on Trump's desk very quickly and is signed into law. So Darrell Issa, the man who was behind the passing of it, said, we took on the activist judges and their rogue rulings. Now it's on to the Senate to send this to the desk of President Trump. Now, let me read to you what was inside the bill. Here is what passed out of the House of Representatives. H.R. 1526, coming out with a bunch of additional sponsors on it. Some of these people we know. We've got Issa, Orden, Weber. We got Gooden, Harris, Luna, Schmidt, Tenney, Langworthy, McGuire, Self, Higgins, Muser, Babin, and LaLota all in on this one. So here's what they said. The bill, it would amend Title 28 of the United States Code and do the following. Saying there is now a new limitation. They're going to add at the end of one section the following statute saying, except as provided in subsection B, notwithstanding any other provision of the law, no United States District Court shall issue any order providing for injunctive relief, except in the case of such an order that is applicable only to the limited act to limit the actions of a party to the case before the district court with respect to the party seeking injunction relief from the district court and non-parties represented by such a party acting in a representative capacity pursuant to the federal rules of civil procedure. So in other words, if a party is certified as a class or something under the rules, they can be covered by the injunction. But this is also, it's good, but it's also a little bit loose because remember, a lot of these are being treated not as injunctions, but as TROs. So I guess the question for interpretation would be, is injunctive relief also applicable to TROs? This is the labeling problem the Democrats have had forever. They call preliminary injunctions TROs so that they're not appealable. So does that stop that at all? Because they're just going to keep doing it, just calling them TROs and extending them. Now, eventually the TROs mature into preliminary injunctions, but this could be tighter. This could also go to TROs. Doesn't look like it's there yet. If a case is brought by 2 or more states locating in different circuits, challenging an action by the executive branch, then that case, so like this would cover the situation right now by the 19 blue states who have all sued Trump. Well, what if they sue? Okay, so this first section might cover, let's say, like the AIDS doctors. The AIDS doctors came in, they said, hey, our AIDS business is going to get obliterated if USAID goes out of business. And we need our contract to be, reinstated. The judge issued an injunction that covered all USAID, not the specific AIDS doctors. So that would apply to them. What happens when the state sued? So if the state sue, then that case shall be referred to a 3-judge panel, except that selection of judges shall be random and not a chief judge of the circuit. So in different circuit, 3-judge panel, where would that 3-judge panel be? The 3-judge panel may issue an injunction that would otherwise be prohibited under subsection A if the 3-judge panel considers the interest of justice, the risk of irreparable harm, and the preservation of the constitutional separation of powers. So that's like introducing another stay factor, which you would say, the judges will just argue around that and just say, oh, it's not we have to do this because Trump is violating the separation of powers. Like this isn't protecting the executive branch much. An appeal of an order granting or denying injunctive relief may lie to the circuit embracing the district or to the Supreme Court at the preference of the party. Okay, so that is creating a separate appellate track, essentially, to the Supreme Court that would, I think, overcome the objections that you see from Amy Coney Barrett or John Roberts saying, we're not going to hear your case until this case matriculates through the Court of Appeals in the proper process. So this would create like a separate track for that, which would accelerate the process. But again, this is injunctive relief. So it's not TROs, which the TROs are much more temporary. And a lot of our problems here are from the TROs. The table of sections for the chapter is also amended, and they're going to add the following, and that's the bill. So it's a step in the right direction. To be clear, most of what we're seeing here are TROs first. We're just now getting to the preliminary injunction stuff, and the TROs are sometimes in effect for 30 days at least, 14 days, extended another 14. So it's a step in the right direction. It's not going to solve the problem entirely, but we will get some more activity out of that. So congrats to the House on passing it. We'll see if the Senate does the same. And of course, have the latest right here. All right, so we got one more update on the day, and then it will be time to hear from you. And I can't wait to see what you say about all of this and more right after we watch Mark Kelly get obliterated. Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat from Arizona, got obliterated today by Joe Kent, who was sitting for his confirmation hearings. And what's so interesting about this clip is that Mark Kelly apparently knows nothing about January 6th or about all the confidential human sources that were there undercover at the scene. In fact, during the Proud Boys trial that we covered here at length, their defense team identified as many as 50 people who were government adjacent during the trial of 5 Proud Boys. So almost 10 times as many people were there as there were criminal sedition conspirators who were being charged by the government. We've known this has existed for a long time. We want the records. At some point, Joe Kent is hopefully going to help us get them. But here's Mark Kelly getting embarrassed by Joe.
This concerns January 6th. Do you believe that the violence on January 6th was intentionally organized or directed?
Still under investigation. We're looking into whether elements of the government could have enhanced the criminal acuity of some of the rioters that day.
So you've said on Twitter that the FBI and the intelligence community were involved in planning and directing the riot. Is that correct?
Sounds like something I said, yeah.
And what evidence do you have for that claim?
So we've already identified that there were multiple confidential human informants ran by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies that were present in the crowd that day, directing, removing barriers, those types of things. This has been investigated widely. We're continuing to look into it. The intelligence, I would say the FBI and other elements of the law enforcement apparatus attempted to suppress the fact that there was undercover confidential human informants that were part of these different groups. We also had intelligence leading up to January 6th that there was going to be violence that day. So that speaks to some degree of intelligence infiltration into some of these groups and organizations.
Who within the FBI?
We're looking into that right now.
Which departments of the FBI?
Probably the Washington field office.
So you believe the Washington field office was involved in the planning of the violence in the building next door on January 6th?
Yep.
It's being looked into. I mean, look, we had
and who is looking into it?
We are in the intelligence community. Yeah, we're looking into it right now.
And do you believe that the IC conducts actions of this nature against Americans?
Does
100%.
the IC, both the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, entrapping individuals? If you look at who was running the Washington field office during January 6th, it was Stephen DeAntuono. He was also running the field office in Michigan, where many of the defendants were let go after they were accused of attempting to kidnap the governor, because the vast majority of them were undercover FBI confidential informants. So unfortunately, this behavior does happen by members of law enforcement and the intelligence community, and it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are transparent with the American people.
Mr. Kent, would you be willing to share this evidence of this investigation with this committee?
I look forward to it, Senator.
All right.
Yeah, maybe you should actually read it there, Mark. A lot of this has been known for a long time, and Mark Kelly sounds like he's never even heard of it. Are you saying the FBI may have been involved in planning some of it? What? They brought him out there. They were communicating with them, bringing them to D.C., facilitating their trips to D.C. Mark, Senator from Arizona. Embarrassing. Now, we also had more. Tulsi Gabbard was out saying, we've got more evidence of more government corruption. Okay, we talked about hacked machines and more. Here's Tulsi explaining, we're looking into that too.
We're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Nice update from Tulsi, because we do have concerns about a lot of that. But she was also on with Sean Hannity, and Sean was asking her about the files, the documents. Where are the Epstein files? Where are the RFK Jr., RFK Sr.? Where are the MLK files? Lots of files we'd like to get our hands on. Crossfire Hurricane, I believe, just dropped today. We'll talk about those tomorrow. And there's a lot of other materials we'd like to get our hands on, like the assassination attempts and much more. Where are they?
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. It's good to be here on your show and really featuring the work that we're doing here at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. You know, the American people's trust in the intelligence community has been eroded and undermined really for decades. There have been intelligence failures, abuses of power, weaponization and politicization of the intelligence that the community provides. You talked about some of the examples of the things that our team that is made up of some of the most talented intelligence officers across the community who love our country and who have been so disgusted and betrayed by leaders who have weaponized it to serve their own political or personal interests. You've gone down a list of many of the things that we're doing. I'll mention a few here. First, you're right. It's not just as simple as saying, okay, hey, go and find these documents. We'll declassify them and release them tomorrow. As you can imagine, the more we dig, the more we find. And we see how people are sometimes, in some cases, resistant to providing us with those documents. In other cases, they have been hidden with the hopes that no one would ever find them.
Okay, well, hopefully you find them and release them. And we are, of course, cognizant of the complexities of an investigation like this. One reason, which would be a very good reason why you would not release these files, is because you're going to indict people. Because you need to build a case against them and you don't want to show all your cards immediately, and you're working on repercussions for it. But that is also something that is extremely rare. And just look historically in American history. How many times have inside government actors been ultimately prosecuted for their crimes? It's very rare. It happens in very rare situations. So that's one reason. Other reasons are privacy and ongoing operations and sources and methods and all the things. But the president ordered these things to be released to the public immediately. And I reposted a Hans Monkey post today on X who said the same thing. He showed the executive order. Trump said, release them immediately. We don't want a bunch of bureaucratic delays and notices and all the things. Give us the documents. We can handle it. Now, someone else who I hope gives us some documents on this situation is RFK Jr., speaking of him, who said, we're going to know by September what is causing this massive autism problem all across America. And I've heard him speak about this before, tracing the date back to 1989, saying that something happened about that time. Something happened with the food, something happened with the technology, something happened with the medicine, or with the preservatives, who knows what. But he traces it back. You can see it almost like as a source date. Autism, 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 boom! Chronic illnesses all over the place, exploded back in the late 1980s. Why is that? RFK Jr. says he's going to get us some answers soon.
We are going, at your direction, we are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that. So it was 1 in 10,000 children had autism, and now it's 1 in 31. Not 31,000, 31.
Crazy.
That's a horrible statistic, isn't it? And there's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this. So you think you're going to have a pretty good idea, huh?
We will know by September.
There will be no bigger news conference on that. So that's
huge.
It. If you can come up with that answer where you stop taking something, you stop eating something, or maybe it's a shot, but something's causing it. It can't be from 10,000 to. Can you imagine that, Marco? That's a big number. Thank you very much. You're doing great.
Okay, so good news on that. No more shots. We're good on the shots. We'll just have something else we got to do on that one. But it could be a lot of things, right? It could be all the electromagnetic stuff. It could be the air that we're breathing, right? Something's going on. Who knows what it is? Something in the water. Who knows? But we're excited to see what the results are. So lots of information hopefully coming soon from RFK, from Cash, from Dan Bongino, from RFK Jr. I think I said him a couple times already, but you get the point. We're waiting for it. We're going to be here to cover it when it drops. All right, my friends. Now, if you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about today. We talked about the blue states begging the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals to please rehire the already fired who were rehired workers again. Don't let Trump fire them again. So we read through that. They're complaining about it. Please bring them back. We're all going to die. Our tax revenues are going to go out the water, and many other things. So read through that. Trump replied and said, the stay shall continue. These people will be fired. They're not coming back. And so we'll continue to cover that out of the Fourth Circuit. We'll see what they do, whether they grant the stay or not. Probably going to SCOTUS on this one. But 19 blue states having a rough time. We also talked about the AP. Judge Trevor McFadden said the AP now has permission to go into Trump's most intimate private spaces, even if he does not want them there. Oval Office, Mar-a-Lago, and elsewhere on his airplane while he's traveling around. AP has to have access because the judge said so. Now, Trump's response, because Trump appealed this, obviously, and responded to the judge, was great. Told the judge, Judge, you're actually just wrong. Like, your analysis is wrong. You called this a free speech case. It's not. It's an access case. No other judge ever, anywhere, ever has forced the president to have somebody in his office. Never. So we'll see what happens on that. But it was a nice memo back, and Trevor out there in D.C. might be having a rough Thursday today. So we'll keep our eye on that. We had great clips from Bernie Sanders, who's confused as hell over they, them. No one knows really what it means. And he just also now told us that. Amazing photo. Okay, so we had that. We also had more reaction on the Rogue Rulings Act. Of course, Congress just passed that, so now the Senate has to carry that ball, see what they do with that. And we learned that Mark Kelly doesn't know anything about January 6th or government informants. Maybe he should go back up to outer space, but Joe Kent, thank you, Joe, for explaining this in front of all of America and to Mark Kelly's head. We appreciate it. So good stuff, my friends, and it's an early stream. Thank you for joining us a bit early. I hope your Thursday's amazing, and I hope your week is unfolding beautifully. Tomorrow is a Friday, and we're going to be back, but we're going to be back here early. It's going to be a bit early. So 12 noon Eastern is the plan for the show tomorrow. We're going to see what the day has in store for us, and thanks for accommodating your boys' travel schedule. I appreciate that. It's going to be a good weekend, and we're looking forward to meeting some friends and some family and celebrating them. But my friends, thanks for being here, and thank you for sending in these amazing donos and supporting our work here. We appreciate you doing that. Let's see who's here today. What's up? Carrie B is doing some clipping for us over on the locals. Thank you for that. Hey, Sharpie guy on local says, you know, in their weirdo way, the Dems appear to be trying to buy their votes in every way possible, and their attempted TROs reflect that to me. Yeah, in other words, they're not accepting a loss. Like they'll use every mechanism of power to maintain their position of power, because I think they know once they lose their power, they're not going to get it back. I think a large part of the Democratic Party is just fake AstroTurf. It's not even real. So once that's gone, they're not getting it back. So this is it. Like they have to fight for this or else they're done. Sharpie guy says, and talk about projection. Accusing Trump of insider trading from his tariff strategy yesterday, working perfectly, is most definitely a tell about Schumer and his cohorts. Yeah, the Democrats are latching onto that one big time right now. I think I saw Chris Murphy. I saw Schumer. They're saying Trump posted, now's a good time to buy, calling that insider trading. Somebody was even asking Lutnick about it, saying, oh, he put DJT on there. Was that his stock ticker? Right? It's like, clearly it wasn't. He signs his tweets like that. But you're right, Sharpie guy. They're coming out. Hey, Bonnie's here. What's up, Bonnie? Bonnie on Locals sent this one over to us. Hey, breaking news. The SAVE Act officially passes in the House to require proof of citizenship in order to vote. Wow, that passed today. 220 to 208. 4 Democrats voted for that? Wow. 208 Democrats voted against voter ID or proof of citizenship. Amazing. Yeah, that's great news, Bonnie. We'll see what the Senate does with that. Why are they so against it? It's very racist of them to have that political position, isn't it? Say certain people are not, sophisticated enough to get ID to go vote or whatever it is. I think Kamala Harris said that. I think Kamala said something like black people can't get IDs because they're in rural areas or something. Remember that? Very racist behavior, but that's who she is. Hey, Ash, what's up, Ash? Thanks for becoming a membo, Ash, and joining up. We didn't do a Membo stream today, and we're not going to get a Membo stream tomorrow, but we will be back on Saturday for our Membos stream. And so, Ash, we'll see you on Saturday for sure. Same to you, Richard White. New Membo, thanks for supporting us. Grab the Membo stream from yesterday, though. It was a good one. Spuds, what's up, Spuds? Thank you, Spuds. Spuds, 5 new Membos coming in. New Membo friends, you know who you are. Thank you to Spuds for bringing them in. Spuds, thanks for doing that. Hey, Michelle is here. Says CISM 2019 Military World Games were held in Wuhan, October. 9,000 athletes from 109 nations, and some returned home sick with a mysterious illness that had the vid. Trump is making China pay. That is true. I mean, the tariffs are obviously very high there. And I've been wondering since COVID happened, even though we may have been a part of that with Fauci, the NIH, and funding the labs over there via EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak and all those monstrous criminals. And Fauci, who got pardoned. I know we were involved in all of that, but wasn't there, I mean, shouldn't there have been a decoupling from China on that basis alone, just on COVID? Unless they're in on it, right? Which they are. All right, what's up? Thank you, Michelle, for that. Nice dono. What's up? Christina Sellers. Thank you, Christina. Welcome aboard. Thanks for becoming a new member. We'll see you on the Saturday show. What's up, Richard White? Intellectually, trans pronouns are bro and kin. Bro and kin. But not the bro like the original bro. Because that would be misgendering them or something, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, even Bernie Sanders doesn't know what the hell's going on with that. What's going on, Mark? Mark Massangill. What's up, Mark Massangill? Hey, says, love you, brother. Thanks for tracking these cases and keeping us in the know. Your passion and energy are inspiring. Have a great trip. Mark, thank you for that. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm inspired by you and by the conversations we have and the work that we can do together. Really, it's a symbiotic thing. I say it a lot, but I learn a lot. And it feels like we support each other. We get through all this madness together. And it's a real honor and a privilege. So thanks for saying that. It's going to be a great trip. I'm excited to see some of my bros. What's up? GSG McLovin says Dominion owns the voting machines that Hillary owns. They both own the machines together? It wouldn't surprise me. Thank you, GSG McLovin. 16 months as a member. Coming up on 2 full babies here. And Acid Burn. What's up, Acid Burn? Says, on January 6th, I saw CBS or ABC News 1 hour after Ashley Babbitt was shot by a beautiful blonde woman, hair tucked under her hat. The gun was kicked back. Ashley up in the door window. Help me prove this. Someone had to record it. A cover-up. A man didn't shoot her. 100% a woman did. Said Acid Burn. Well, I saw the video. I'm thinking back to the video, Acid Burn. I definitely remember the video of Ashley Babbitt, and I remember her coming through the video, through the scene, and I remember seeing the gun coming out from the side, right, from this side. Didn't hear any warnings, didn't hear any stops or anything like that, and she kind of steps up into the window, and then he steps up, and then shoots, and then kind of steps back. And I think I remember seeing the hands, and I think it was a black man, and the man who was credited with shooting her was a black man. His name's escaping me at the moment, but I'm trying to visualize the video. I don't remember seeing a blonde woman in there anywhere, but it's an interesting thesis, Acid Burn, and thank you for the nice dono. I don't remember that blonde woman. Anyone else out there seeing any blonde women's? Acid Burn said that was a fake video. CW. Yeah, the Pi Squared says this, the gun looks like it was elsewhere. CW says she looked like she was pushed up in there. Shane says yeppers, maybe to that. Surfing Bird says, yeah, it was a black man. It was a black man. Remember that in the video. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I remember the video as that, but I could be wrong. Michael Bird, that was the name. Yeah, Michael Bird. And he was a problematic figure as well because he was that same guy who left his gun in the toilet, if you remember. So that's not good because then people can come into the Capitol building and just get your gun and then do something bad in there since it's a congressional building. So that was not good. Yeah, that was not good. What did that say? ABC and CBS also said 9/11, the State Department had been blown up. So yeah. Well, yeah, ABC and CBS are pretty bad. What's up, Mike Lee? Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so good stuff, my friends. Now, we'll leave it there on the day. Thank you for sending in these donos. Thank you for your amazing support. What's up, Acid Burn? That was a remake of the video. Yeah, there's a lot of strange videos out there from January 6th. Thanks for the tip, Acid Burn. And we'll keep keep looking for all possible explanations out there. But my friends, we are going to leave it there on the day. Thank you for joining us early and for adjusting to the travel schedule. We will come back tomorrow morning. We're going to be early. So 9 a.m. my time is going to be 12 noon Eastern. It's going to be an amazing Friday. We're going to cover whatever the day has in store for us. I can't wait to get into you then. Before we round it out, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who mod the fort down for us. K-Bean, Donut, Mind Me. We got Carrie B clipping for us today. Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek. We also got Elliot, Docmaster, Geegum Geegum, our meme smith extraordinaire, who's dropping them like it's hot on locals today. And Elliot, Docmaster, and just Rhonda, purveyor of fine emojis, all keeping this train on the track. We're grateful. So, my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. Tomorrow, we are coming back to get into it again. In order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it an amazing day, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.